John Summers is the motoring historian. He was a company car thrashing technology sales rep that turned into a fairly inept sports bike rider. Hailing from California, he collects cars and bikes built with plenty of cheap and fast, and not much reliable. On his show, he gets together with various co hosts to talk about new and old cars, driving, motorbikes, motor racing, and motoring travel.
Eastbound and down, loaded up and trucking. Are we gonna do what they say can't be done? We've got a long way to go and a short time to get there. I'm eastbound, just watch no bandit run.
Good day, good morning, good afternoon. It is John Summers, the motoring historian, in a special episode here. I have my son, Oliver, with me. Ollie, why are you with me today?
That's a rhetorical question.
Well, the shrugging doesn't work well on TV. They can't see you, can they? I could see you, but nobody else could. We've been to see we went and played with some hydrogen trucks, didn't we?
We didn't exactly play, we just learned about them.
Right.
And we went to the first hydrogen, fueling station in, this very unattached, next to the highway kind of area, because it's supposed to fuel big rigs which kind of obviously drive on the highway most of the time. So
it was at the port of Oakland, wasn't it?
So off the highway and not the nicest part of town.
It's at the port of Oakland, and it's also they like doing ports. The reason they were focused on doing ports is because there's always loads of trucks queuing up there.
Yeah,
so
to get crates.
This is not so much. This is not so much about fixing global warming. This is more about making sure that people living in the immediate area of the ports don't suffer respiratory illnesses as a result of literally thousands of trucks idling in their neighbourhood.
So,
and those of us, I guess the port of Oakland's pretty big. I guess similar in size to Liverpool or Southampton, but Los Angeles, or more specifically Long Beach, my God, it's on a different kind of scale. So that's the kind of challenge there that we went to learn about them trying to fix, right?
Yep. To set the scene for everybody listening to this, we showed up and it was still kind of you could see the gas or the hydrogen station clearly. It was a hydrogen station, but there was still construction stuff scattered around because it's they haven't cleared all that stuff out. They just wanted to get to the presentation as soon as possible. Anyway, we went into this little tent thing, not your camping tent, obviously.
Marquee.
Whatever he just said, and then there was five, maybe four people who did presentations. There was one, the leader kinda who organized it was, I think, was Matt, the guy from First Element, or was he just the organizer?
Yeah, I think he was from First Element, and it felt as if First Element was some government-funded agency who were involved in trying
I thought First Element was the company who got the hydrogen, because hydrogen's hard to find. And then...
Well, it's not hard to find, but it's hard to process, isn't it? That's what
we'll get to later on in the podcast, is that it's hard to process to actually be ready to put into vehicles.
Yeah. Now, so when we rocked up, there's a couple of Hyundai trucks there, semi-trucks, and a couple of Nikolas as well. I'd heard of Nikola before, never seen the trucks before. Both 18-wheeler style highway haulers without trailers, just the tractor units, both cab overs. And we'll come back to that in a minute, because when you first look at them, they look like normal trucks. And then when you look a bit more close...
massive sleeper.
Yeah, like a European-style sleeper and an aero package on it. But then when you look a bit more closely, that's actually not sleeper.
That's a bunch of hydrogen tanks.
Yeah, hydrogen gubbins. So anyway, that was quite interesting. So we rocked up there. Marquee
so it's day cabs. It's still day cabs. That's what you should take away from that paragraph.
Yeah, thanks. That is useful, that summing up, because I quite often feel on my pods, I nearly make a point, but don't quite actually close home the point, so people don't
call
really...
me Shakespeare.
I'll call you King William.
Yeah, let's go.
All right. Yeah. So the trucks, the marquee with the great and the good, telling us all about it. Cold California weather that was quite amusing as well, wasn't it? You were well equipped with your hoodie, and a gas station
not
which
to freeze.
which kind of looked like a normal gas station, but the more you looked, wasn't really like a normal
No,
gas station.
well, the only thing that really gave it away that made it apart from, if you looked at two pictures, the hydrogen station and the gas station, you could tell them apart because just to give you, like, just saying it was very obvious to tell them apart if you look closely at them. Like, the pumps were actually, like, they were, like, squarer and bigger. That's, like,
Yeah.
the only thing that could, that's
Yeah.
the real thing that really changed,
Yeah.
or gave it away to anybody who, gas
Yeah.
station, yeah.
Yeah, and later in the thing, and we'll talk about this, when one of us actually gassed a truck up, as it were, then it was clear that this was much more like, this was not,
like-
it wasn't really like conventional, gassing up a conventional,
What's like the proper,
diesel 18-wheeler.
what's like the proper verb for like hydrogening up?
Yeah, we could make one up, couldn't we? We could call it splooting up, couldn't we?
You just said
Why
that
not?
as Arthur.
Well, exactly. I was just thinking of that. But it's like pickleball, isn't it? Pickleball is named after the founder's dog, Pickle. That's why it's called pickleball.
That's not true.
It's absolutely
That
true.
can't be true.
That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true.
Was it green?
Yeah. It's lucky the
Oh,
dog
he said it. Yeah, it is green. He just the
It's
man
what
here
green?
just said it was green.
is what green?
The dog pickle. He said it was green.
I don't know what colour pickle was.
You don't know what color pickle is?
The dog. I don't know what colour pickle the dog was.
Let's just assume
You
it's
were talking
green.
about
Let's
pickles,
just assume
weren't-
it's green.
Well, no, to pickles, as in Branson pickle, it's brown, isn't it? It's not green.
Yeah, but a pickle.
We're digressing, aren't we? People tuned in to hear about the hydrogen, not you and me being silly about the colour of pickles. Pickle is either green or brown, isn't it? Like earthy, earth
maybe the
tones.
inside's brown. Earth tones.
Earth tones.
Next, coming up next, the blue pickle.
All right, so the four great and the good that stood up and talked to us. Who were they? There was
the
first
lady.
element dude, the
Matt.
lady from CARB, the air resource people like Gavin Newsom, like, clean air for people. And she was also like an Oakland person, so that was good. There was a dude from Hyundai Trucks, and I talked with him a bit afterwards. I got to know him quite well. And there was
His waist jacket was
his waist jacket
rumbled.
rode up in a weird way, didn't it? It did, yeah.
No, and he was
Yeah.
like slumped in his chair.
Well, it was uncomfortable for them, wasn't it? It was not the.
Why, they had nicer seats.
Did they have nicer seats?
Yeah.
We were stuck out in the. Well, actually, of course, everyone sits around the back, don't they? So we, of course, I don't know what we were doing. I was in the loo or something like that. But either way, we were like a little bit late in, and then we had to like sneak across, and we sat right at the front. And it turned out we were sat right next to the journalist from the LA Times.
No,
didn't it?
no, Guy had like his little pro, like Sherlock Holmes, like
Spiral notepad. Yeah.
yeah, like if you could imagine, yeah. And then he's just like sitting next to us with his pen, like scribbling down
Yeah.
thoughts. And then he asked this crazy question, like, yeah, what was it? Reframe it to our viewers a little simpler.
Yeah.
Just
the question.
imagine this a lot more complexly asked instead of what you're about to witness with him simplifying it.
Basically, reading between the lines of his question, and it took me to learn about. It took me to. I had to have the rest of the demo before his question made sense to me. But his question was basically, is the delivery system that you have
Clean.
for hydrogen, is that clean? Is that green? Or are you delivering hydrogen to this station here on a diesel tanker? That's was the kind of thing that he was
Ooh,
driving at.
that's smart.
Well, because the hydrogen has messed up stuff in it. And the other thing is the hydrogen has to be cooled.
Well, then it's still not.
And how do you
really
cool
helping.
it?
It's just
You're gonna
another-
cool it
Wait,
using
so
an-
are you saying it's just another way of doing it? other than diesel trucks, or is it just, or is it actually helping?
Well, that's why the guy was asking the
environment,
question. Was
whatever.
he was saying if you're dieseling all the hydrogen into this hydrogen station and then being, look at our clean hydrogen trucks here, but if
if they don't make any sales from the hydrogen, then they're just kind of, they just have
but
this
it's
cool
not-
thing that's, one, not making the money, two, unproving their point.
But it's not even about the sales. It's about whether or not. It's about whether or the question was about whether or not the whole cycle from extracting the hydrogen through moving the hydrogen to the right location through making sure that the hydrogen was cooled. It was that section before it ever got into the truck. That was the bit that he was asking about, and that apparently is where the industry has not had the greenest credentials in the past. And the CEO of was ready, was like, ho ho, I was sort of ready for that question. So it's interesting. So that was pretty interesting, wasn't it, all around, darling?
Also, I have 2 points here. If you're expecting for anything on Nikola trucks, the lead dude, Matt, said there's nobody from Nikola, so everything we learned really that we like couldn't see for ourselves or read for ourselves.
Well, the Nikola reps were there, weren't they? They just weren't on the panel.
Well, yeah, but and then my second point is, I just want us to tell you, probably him, because I forget.
There were Cummins reps. There was a rep from Cummins as well. Did you see that? He buggered off pretty
tell me
early,
about-
but he was there.
Oh yeah, he really did. Yeah, there was early leavers.
There always are at places like that.
Well, that's really weird. Why do you bother to show up if you only stay there? For
My
15
point
minutes?
exactly. My point exactly. It's like people who leave the gig so that they don't have to queue in the car park before the encore. Why do you bother coming at all?
That's like the best part.
Exactly.
We waited to go from Bruce Springsteen like,
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe an hour, 2 hours.
Yeah.
But it's not as long as waiting for like a whole day.
It's not as long as this time Gammy and I, we went to Silverstone. It bloody rained. Bloody people got their cars stuck leaving the field. We were still there at midnight. We just slept in the Vectra.
And tell the viewers how long that was, or when did the race start and end?
Oh no, the race started at like 2 o'clock or something. We were late. I was running along that start-finish straight to try and get to a cop's corner where I could see it as the race started. So that was pretty annoying. But what was more annoying was when we got back to the car, then we couldn't drive out of the car park.
Well, I just like to.
Silverstone's famous for that, by the way. Having really terrible facilities to access to and from. I always think of it when people moan about the traffic at Laguna Seca. It's always like, yeah, you should try Silverstone in the rain. This is how do we get talking about this? There's nothing.
I like Laguna Seca because, one, there's always Group C cars there. No favorite car. Texaco
Well, when we've been at
956.
Pebble Beach, there's always been Group C cars.
Well, that's the only time I really go.
Yeah.
And then also they have that Jumpin' Joe's soft serve, which I always get, which is so good.
Yeah. So
It's
look
like a
at
soft serve truck.
did you catch that? So the priorities are the Texaco Havoline Porsche 956. I believe there's only one in that livery. And
Which I
the
plan to buy when I grow up.
and the soft serve ice cream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
All right,
like 20 minutes ago, we got onto this rat hole, but
We're doing pretty well. We're only 14 minutes in now.
Well, the point I was trying to make before those 4 minutes went down a rat hole about Laguna Seca and all that, is that there was like 4 things, or like, I don't know, like phases of this event. The first one was
The press conference.
was like the press, which we're talking about. Next is, spoiler alert,
Well, I was going to say that. Let's talk about
the refinery of the hydrogen,
the
which
science bit. Yeah.
which was sort of in the middle.
So it's right
between-
there.
Stop. But right between in the middle, like a long and thin rectangle, which was sort of in the middle of the light and medium duty area, and the heavy duty hydrogen trucks which they had on display there, and then they had one SUV hydrogen light duty on the other side. Anyway, in the middle there was the refinery and everything, and a really long and thin water tower that we talk about. Then the next one, which was, now we split into groups and stuff, but of course we were late, so we were just like, can we join this group? We didn't really understand how they split the groups.
Well, we did. We just didn't. We were meant to be like, I don't know what we were meant to be doing, but our group was taking a long time to form up, wasn't it? So I was just like, let's just not be in the right group. So we went over to the group with that was going straight into the science bit, which is the right way to do it. We had to put these heavy coats on, didn't we?
Yeah.
And these eye defender things.
Yeah, I don't even know how they helped, because I took them off, and then...
Yeah. Anyway, it was something to do with cooling and expanding, and this dude with the beard, he explained it 3 times, and I still didn't bloody understand it.
No, and I made live TV, which we'll talk about later. Then the next bit was the fueling demonstration, which I imagine we'd be
Well,
back
hang on a minute. Do you not want to say anything more about the science bit?
Well, I will say, but just...
We're not doing an overview here. We'll do the science bit. We don't need to tell him what's coming. It's not like a TV show from the 1990s where you tell them what's happened and then you tell them what's happening in case they just came in after a commercial break, or in case people are stupid. I often think people do that.
Really?
Yeah. I don't like to recap, because recap's boring if you paid attention. If you've been paying attention, you're like, why do I need the recap? Only stupid
Honestly,
people
if
need
I'm
the recap.
watching my favorite TV show on like channel TV, I'm watching the ads.
Yeah, well, you like the story of the ads as well, which is the delicious thing about being as young as...
EK,
Have it your way.
You suck!
All right, yes, thank you, Ollie. All right, the science bit. Do you want to say anything more about the science bit? We didn't understand it. The dude had a beard. He was very clever. He had a beard and no hair and was very clever. And the TV camera guy asked him some stuff and he explained it quite well. But us dummies still didn't understand it. That was about
also,
it,
the only thing that I really remembered was there was a bunch of pipes inside a converting shipping container.
Yeah,
Blue.
yeah.
Very nice
Yeah.
shade of blue.
Well, it just arrived on a shipping container. It was the same scale because they moved those
It was a
kind of power
converted shipping
units.
container because it
in it.
had doors in the side of it.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's go on to talking about
The fill-up section.
So I was imagining this.
So we got our robe, we got our like shirts and like security, like eye defender affairs off, didn't we? Trooped out across, and now we're in this filling station.
Okay, wait,
with this great big Hyundai truck parked up, as if you were like, and we're at the gas pump now. We're gonna like, gas it up.
Well, before we tell you what happens with this, I just want to tell you, I was imagining this when I read like the description of what's gonna happen in the day on my dad's phone. It said the like demonstration. So I was imagining like everybody at the event, we'd be back into that tent thing, whatever thing you call
Marquee.
it. Marquee. And we'd like, watch it happen, like in action. But instead it was one of the like rotation group things. So we strut on over and we do the thing. So let's talk about
Well, did they ask you? How come you ended up doing it? Did somebody ask you? Because one minute I was like, I don't know if I was futzing on my phone or what happened. But
Well,
the next
this
minute
guy was also-
you were there with the pump, like doing it into the truck.
Well, this guy was also bold. He asked me, "You want to do it?" And I said, "Yeah, of course. I mean, why not?"
Why not? Yeah.
And then he
Kid
asked,
can do it. Anyone can do it, right?
"Yeah,
Probably not true, in fact, but yeah.
yeah, you couldn't have done it."
Where it had it seemed to have like you had to
You know
pull
what?
the
Let's
collar
not
back.
talk about the sleeve. Let's not talk about that yet.
You want to save that detail.
Hey, who got mad at me on the pod because
I don't
was
like going
talking
too
about-
fast. I don't like going too fast. Yeah, we did this once and then it didn't record for some reason skillfully.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's such a pro.
Yeah, I'm such a pro.
Yeah, guys took like 18 episodes of this pod and still hasn't figured out how to work podcast. Alright, anyway.
Tell us about the collar.
No, first, and then he asked my dad, can he do it? And he was like staring at his phone, like, texting, whatever. doom scrolling. He's probably doom scrolling.
No, I wasn't. I was texting with your mother. I was trying to get the camera up to film you doing it.
Whatever, and then he said yes because he was doom scrolling. Assumptions. Anyway, so I grabbed the thing, maybe about, I don't know, 10 pounds, pretty heavy. And we opened this like rectangular door on the side, like longer than a regular gas opener on your regular car. I mean, obviously it's a truck, but heavy duty highway hauler. But anyway, opened it up with a little button, like the Tesla handle. What do they call? Not handlebars. How am I forgetting this? Door handle. I forget that. So he takes the thingy off. I kerchunk it onto the slot. That was like, it was like a circular like thing sticking out.
Approximately what diameter would you have said?
Maybe like an espresso cup.
Okay. What was it made
Or
of?
the circumference of a
Espresso, yeah. What was it made of?
metal. And it was like maybe a longer. And I put the pump, which was round as well, maybe like a new roll of tape thick. I put it onto the espresso mug shaped thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then it made a nice click right on there, really smooth. I don't know if that matters. It's brand new.
It would matter, because if it didn't click on properly, the freezing cold hydrogen could like spray out everywhere. I'm sure that wouldn't be at all dangerous.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know, but, like-
I'm sure my dad wouldn't screw that up.
No, I never could. But the idea is, right, that any old trucker can do it. That this is the thing
I mean,
with this.
they're pros.
Yeah, but there are millions of trucks making millions of fills every day, and this mechanism has got to work every time.
Well, anyway, so it works, and then funny story, my dad was still doom scrolling when I did this, so
I didn't. I got some film of him doing it. I don't know what he's talking about, but yeah.
Whatever.
Tell your story.
Whatever. He wasn't paying attention, and then there was like what seemed to be 2 grades, and while it was still filling up, I asked the dude that question, and about the 2 different grades. There was just medium and light duty.
Yeah, no,
there was H. It said H70 and then an orange M, or just H70. H70 is for the heavy duty trucks, and then
H70 star is if you are part of a truck company that's negotiated a special prepaid rate with, like, the gas station, which was that First Element. Was that the name of the gas station?
No, it was True Zero.
True Zero is the name of the gas station, wasn't it? I'm going to rustle my papers now and get the notepad that I actually had, the notes that I actually took. Let's see let's remind ourselves who was involved. True Zero, First Element, Hyundai, and Nikola.
Well, also,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
But also just for reference, I don't think you can look this up yourself, but I don't think that Nikola has anything to do with Tesla.
yeah, no, we didn't know anything about Nikola trucks, and of course I should have done some research about
We-
that.
we-
Have we finished at the pump? Because after the pump, we went over and looked at the actual trucks. We're ready to talk about the actual trucks.
I just have one more thought on the pump. After we were like, the group was kind of pressing on to the trucks, and we hung back and sort of asked the dude a couple questions. And then the question that I thought was really good, actually, and the dude thought was good, was I asked him, on the side there was like a plastic thing sticking out from the pump that was big, that was really big. And there was nothing in it, but it looked like it'd hold something. And it looked like it'd hold just a bigger version of the
the receptacle, like the what would be like the bit of the gas pump, like in a normal gas pump, that you would put your hand on and that you would lift out of the pump and put into the side of your car. It was like there was an alternative one of those, wasn't there?
There was like an extra one. Yeah.
And what did he say it was for? Was it for a different kind of truck or something?
Yeah. It was. It was
Yeah.
for the Nikola trucks, I think. But there wasn't actually one. There wasn't actually a pump in the slot. Also, though, if you're wondering how the like nozzle gripped onto the side of the truck to let the hydrogen in was there was like these three little teeth that would grab on to a thin pipe inside the espresso mug, and that's how it held on. And then there was like a sleeve or like a collar around that you pull down to detach the thing from the nozzle from the truck. And what was I gonna say about that?
Well, we're going to talk about the trucks now.
Well, I had one more. I just lost for the like finishing of that. Oh yeah, well on the collar, you just pulled it back and it came out, and it auto stops when it senses that you don't want to do a full fill, and you pull the sleeve back. That it auto stops the hydrogen coming in, so you can pull off without the hydrogen spewing everywhere. So now we can move on to the trucks.
Yeah, I've just had a look at my notes here. So I spoke to the Hyundai guy, didn't I?
Yeah, you told me.
Before we did the truck thing, and this was pretty interesting because this reflects on what Ollie's going to tell us about the trucks in a minute. Is that when I said to him, why now for Hyundai? And
that's what he basically said, but he was lost for words when he tried to say that.
Thanks, Ollie. Yeah, but basically, I was like, why now?
He also said this in the press conference, right? Like,
well, I asked the question in the press conference, and then I found myself. I thought I was asking a different question when I was chatting with the guy, and then as I was like talking, I realised I wasn't asking a different question. I was asking actually the same question. It's like, why are Hyundai hot for this now? And the answer he gave me was surprisingly candid, which is, most of the heavy haulers on the road in Korea anyway are Hyundais, right? So we already had the body and the chassis and
so they were
all of that. And they already had the drivetrain, the hybrid drivetrain that they'd built for other applications. So they just put the hybrid drivetrain in there, or at least they were, they were going to build the hybrid drivetrain. So it was like a Lego-like application. That was...
Also, what you should take away from that to simplify what he just said, or to sieve it a little bit more, is that they just converted the truck. They just bought a couple hundred Hyundai trucks and converted them. They converted the sleeper into hydrogen tanks.
Yeah, whereas the Nikola is like a bespoke electric truck. So let's just talk about this. I thought this was quite interesting. 4 key advantages for heavy duty applications for hydrogen over a traditional battery electric truck. So this isn't in competition with diesel trucks. This is in competition with other electric trucks that have a battery like a conventional electric car.
Really, they're like enemy, as like Google is like rivals with Apple. It's sort of like diesel trucks aren't really in the picture for hydrogen trucks being rivals with
so let's talk about that, right?
Hydrogen trucks are basically rivals with EV trucks, not EV or hydrogen trucks are rivals with diesel trucks. They're just, the diesel trucks are out of the picture.
And the reason that they're out of the picture is that an over the road truck might be doing 600-800 miles a day, and it might be going to all sorts of different destinations. It might not even know, where and just so the whole Whereas what works for hydrogen is you fill up in one place, or what works for electric generally is you charge in one place and you drive and you do local routes, maybe with a lot of stop-start, probably with quite light weight,
But with
and
like
then you come back, and then you come back to base.
But with like 400, but with like it takes like 4 hours to fill your or to charge your your given electric truck. And even if you take like some Tesla Model X or whatever, it takes about that time too. So
Well, no, I mean, the point is that
So that's
any
a- that's a-
BE that the
that's
chart.
a point that hydrogen that the Matt used as an advantage to prove their point during the press conference is that EV trucks, because they're rivals with them, take longer, just to use it as a compliment.
Yeah. So the BEVs, battery vehicles, the application in heavy trucking is difficult because they take such a long time to recharge, even if they're supercharging. These Hyundais have a 400, 500 mile, 450 mile out. Those were the numbers that they were talking about. Range, which is okay if you're doing local deliveries, last mile stuff. Obviously not good as a highway hauler. They have a better payload. A hydrogen truck's going to have a better payload than a traditional battery truck, because the traditional battery truck has to carry the weight of the battery.
Which is why electric trucks, this might be with hydrogen trucks, I might have got confused, but I think
hydrogen trucks are electric, aren't they? That's the thing.
Yeah, but it's not quite the same thing.
No, because one uses a battery, the other
uses
uses hydrogen.
Yeah,
to create the electricity.
But the hydrogen, was it the hydrogen trucks that partnered with Fritos because their potato chips are really light?
No, that's the Tesla truck. Proving that the Tesla truck is not.
You mean the Nikola truck?
No, the Tesla big rig. There's a Tesla big rig.
So Nikola and Tesla, two different
Separate
things.
companies. Yeah, totally separate. We're not talking about the Tesla big rig here, because that is battery powered, not hydrogen powered.
But we'll definitely refer to it.
The other example they used was, we're probably aware of that traffic jam in Germany where some people had to sit in the car overnight, and people who had the electric cars, they had to run the heaters overnight. In the morning, the cars wouldn't start to drive away. Whereas, of course, the gas people, they could just leave the motor running all night and there was still gas in the tank and they could drive off in the morning. So this kind of flexibility in the face of a natural disaster, it's pretty clear that the Minnesota winter, the Freightliner with the Cummins diesel is going to be the one for that. Still for some considerable time. However, local stuff, regional stuff, local stuff, last mile stuff where, these trucks, it's at the Port of Oakland, so they can fill up, go to a distribution centre, drop off, and then come back. And as long as that's 500, that's 200 miles there and back, that's going to absolutely work for them. One thing that is quite interesting is, for this concept to work, this gas station has to work absolutely faultlessly, because of course if that gas station doesn't work faultlessly, there is nowhere else for the trucks to go. So those people who are using those hydrogen trucks, those people don't have a business anymore. And of course that's the challenge, getting diesel operators to flip, is they might be able to see economies of scale, there might be economies of scale, but getting them to flip into a situation where if one gas station goes down, they're screwed, or where they need a particular driver with a particular set of skills, and if he is taken sick that day, they don't have anybody who can operate that truck. That's the challenge that they've got. But this is a challenge with any kind of technological development, right? Is that you have path dependency, don't you?
And this may be obvious because of what we said later, that they didn't have sleepers because it's all hydrogen tanks that kind of look like missiles. But
well, no, let's talk about that.
Is
right?
that they're not regional? If you're really taking all this in, they're not regional things. Like, it's not going. These hydrogen trucks, unless they make a new model, they're not going from here to New York. They're going from like here to LA, maybe hydrogening up once, and on the maybe going there and back in 2 days.
So let's talk about the design of the truck. They are basically cab overs. Both the Nikola and the Hyundai were cab overs. Where the engine would normally be is the electric motor. Where the sleeper would normally be are all the hydrogen tanks.
And there's a lot of them. They're long.
Because it looks even bigger for a sleeper,
I
right?
think
It doesn't. The more you look, the more you think like, no, this doesn't look like a European sleeper. And of course, to Americanize, where most trucks, especially trucks with a sleeper, are conventional. You know, they've got the long square nose on them. To their eyes, the cab over with the sleeper, that's a configuration you never really had.
No,
in the
but
States,
I always thought it was a sleeper. Well, we both walked in and we first saw it. Because the first truck we saw when we came in was a Nikola truck. And we saw the bigger sleeper. Or what we thought was a sleeper. We were both like, that's a big sleeper. When it's not. Also, these long, thin hydrogen tanks that we said that kind of looks like missiles, there were 6 of them. I counted.
Yeah, and they're all like stacked up, aren't they? In the
3
space.
on each.
Yeah, so there is a payload implication, right? That this is taking up less weight than a battery might, but there is still a payload implication. So at this point, right, before we went out on the test drive, I was feeling like I felt the technology was pretty much 80% baked. One of the panelists, I forgot to say this, but the most compelling panelist, made the point that because of the way that BEVs are, if California is to meet its goal of zero emissions in trucks by 2046, if California is to do that, hydrogen has to be part of the solution. So in other words, there's a lot of pressure to develop better solutions than what we have at the moment. But as I say, at this point, I was feeling like the solutions were pretty, kind of 80-90% baked. As we moved on,
Definitely the Hyundai trucks is what I believe in what he's saying. Maybe 90 to 95% with the Nikola trucks, and I'll tell you why in a little bit when we start to get to the ride that we did in the Hyundai truck.
So 80 or it felt 80% baked at this point. Looking at the trucks themselves, I'm not sat in a modern Freightliner or Sterling to know how they might compare. But of course, automatic transmission, screens, and pretty much of a muchness. They had a couple of different drivers, didn't they, who were actual truck drivers, and this was quite interesting.
On the note of screens and nicer and better to drive and more efficient, I sat in both of the trucks, but we drove in the Hyundai truck. At the end, we'll talk about final thoughts and Hyundai truck driving, but from the sitting in the truck's perspective, when I sat in the Nikola truck, during the press conference, they're like, this is the future. The Nikola truck struck me as more of the future. The Hyundai truck struck me of more of a hydrogen truck of today. And then when they say it's of the future, the Nikola truck is the truck of the future. And the reason I feel that way is because the Nikola truck is like, it has like heated seats and cooling seats, like a pretty decent sized TV, or not TV, like screen for directions facing at the driver, and it had electrical adjustable seats, and it's more like slicker and more like efficient looking. Even if it may not be, it still looks like that. So if I was a company like Ryder, I might buy the Nikola, and I was in the market for hydrogen trucks, I might buy the Nikola truck instead of the Hyundai truck for those reasons. And then everything that I just said, the opposite of it is the Hyundai truck.
So they laid on these proper truckers to talk to us about the trucks as we were like, you know, climbing in and out of them, and yet then they drove, whilst, you know, whilst one of us sat in the passenger seat and the other one struggled to cross his legs, crammed in the kind of sleeper, kind of center console, kind of plastic tray in between the
Well, the
two
plastic
seats.
tray could have fit a corgi, if you know how big they are.
So conventional truck, diesel truck, 17 or 18,000 pounds. These guys, 35,000 pounds.
Which is why they partnered with a potato chip brand.
Well, no, that was because it's hydrogen, not, you know, battery. Yeah, up to a point, but there's still, you know, the sheer weight of the vehicle itself, which, you know, is double what it was. So there's a payload implication there, isn't there? So I feel like that made me that took the wind out of my sails a little bit. And then I began to really think about what it was as we drove around the Port of Oakland. I began to think about what it was really going to take to make even a big fleet like Werner or Schneider think about making a flip, let alone, you know, one-man band truck, you know, truck driver. I guess the other thought I had is the drive, because it's like an electric vehicle drive. It's you know, one pedal with heavy, you know, regen braking, which
that was a big part.
Which
regen braking,
which we talked about a lot. But I guess Ollie, you and I didn't talk about this. I just found myself thinking, I feel like we're very close to autonomy. There was so little for the driver to do.
No, literally, I think there was like, the brake pedal was like, only, like, you know how, there's like the 18, like gear highway haulers, diesel highway haulers, who have like a creep gear for like traffic on the highway. You don't even need a creep gear with these. You just kind of have to, like, kind of feather, and it'll just kind of regen brake into a creep, and you'll.
Yeah.
So you don't need it.
Yeah. So we're. So, any final thoughts, Ollie?
I like the Nikola trucks better. They just, you know, seemed more of what they stated, the reasons. The reasons that they stated in the press conference, the Nikola trucks seemed to fit them a little bit better. So, yeah. Pretty much.
There have been other hydrogen initiatives, apparently.
There's been sports cars and stuff.
Well, no, but within California, there have been other hydrogen initiatives, which by implication haven't really gone anywhere. I can't pretend to be an expert on them, but clearly they haven't. So that made me feel like, well, maybe this isn't, you know, a shoo-in to succeed. And certainly the technology seems, if the technology is hard to explain, it must be bloody hard to run properly. So I feel like we're, you know, and even, you know, clearly the difficult part of the technology is the science bit in getting the hydrogen, and cooling it and so on. And what we spent a lot of time talking about was how to make that more efficient. And as we said, you know, the LA Times journalist, his question was around the process before. So it feels like, you know, the trucks themselves are like, you know, David Beckham's boots. You know, they're a part of the important thing is his brain and his leg, not really his shoe, although his shoe is the part that the ball's gonna, you know, connect with, if that's not a really stupid metaphor. So, you know, I just feel like the trucks aren't that relevant, you know. So was I disappointed I wasn't able to drive one? No. Was I pleased that Ollie had a chance to sit in it? Yeah. Was I struck by the fact that he could probably have driven it? Yeah. I was.
Probably could have driven it.
I was struck by that. Watching these things.
Pretty much, there was one pedal.
And watching
it's
these
like
things.
The all new one pedal driving.
I'm watching these things creep around the filling station. you know, and then creep out silently, you do find yourself thinking, you know, it wasn't that long ago when you could smoke in pubs and bars. It wasn't that long ago when you sat in traffic, you could smell the exhaust fumes from every car, you know, when LA's traffic was full of, you know, no smog V8s, you know, with NOx and
Chevelles.
hydrocarbons
Pumping
and
out the
yeah,
smoke.
so it wasn't that long ago that we were there and we just accepted it. You know, you just accepted that when you went to a bar, even if you weren't a smoker, you came out stinking of smoke because everyone in the bar smoked. I think the noise of diesel, I think the smell of diesel is going to go the same way. What music do you think we should use for this episode?
The Halvar and Clarence ad.
All right, we can use the Halvar and Clarence ad. What else do you think we should? What other music do you think we try and pull out?
Industry Baby by Jack Harlow.
I don't even know that.
Because you never listened to it.
Well, no, the music.
It's so good.
The music.
I can literally sing it if you want.
The music. No, thanks. The music in our the music in the episode, as discussed with Gammy, is we try and publicize like little known or unknown cheesy heavy metal bands.
Crowbar.
Crowbar, yeah. Crowbar, I've seen you 6 times and you were shit every time. Really, the worst live show. The worst live show I've ever seen.
No,
I've seen
and
some
look
really
up
bad live
look up
shows.
like pictures of Crowbar. They're so I don't know why I keep saying it like that. Look up pictures of Crowbar.
You won't want to meet them in a dark night, Ollie. They were mean looking.
No, they got like face tattoos and like and like they got like they have like I think one of them one of them has like a
tattoo of a butt on his butt with a butt-shaped motif.
no, he has like a cobra on top of one of his eyes or something. What a
Have we come to a natural conclusion, Ollie?
yeah.
By popular demand, the Chronicles of Halvar and Clarence will soon be released as a series of audiobooks. Join me, Halvar, the world's greatest, most brilliant, strongest, toughest, sexiest, and most modest barbarian as I crush wizards and kick ass. Oh, and yeah, Clarence might bother to show up. He's a gnome thief. The smallest member of the crew. Ha 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 ha! A real tinky winky. Ain't that right, Titch?
Very true, big man. However, I can always introduce a comely wench to a truly massive cock, now can't I?
Ha! You can! I, of course, have a... Hey! Hold on! Hey! Fuck you! Come back here, you little bastard!
Double or Quits by J.D. Gammy. Available now on iBooks, Audible, and everywhere that's cool.
This episode has been brought to you by Grand Touring Motorsports as part of our Motoring Podcast Network. For more episodes like this, tune in each week for more exciting and educational content from organizations like the Exotic Car Marketplace, the Motoring Historian, Break Fix, and many others. If you'd like to support Grand Touring Motorsports and the Motoring Podcast Network, sign up for one of our many sponsorship tiers at www.patreon.com/GT Motorsports. Please note that the content, opinions, and materials presented and expressed in this episode are those of its creator, and this episode has been published with their consent. If you have any inquiries about this program, please contact the creators of this episode via email or social media as mentioned in the episode.